Well, good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Wayback Wednesday. I'm Randy Adcox. Last week, we had a great show last week for those that may have missed it. We were talking about old gas stations around Rocky Mount and had a lot of fun reliving memories with some of you, the viewers, and it was fun for me too. I have to admit, I love going over this old stuff, and particularly the things that I remember. Some of this stuff is before my time and I did not remember, but in those cases, it's always good to hear from you guys who do remember some of these older events and places and businesses in Rocky Mount. So if you remember from last week's show, we actually ran out of time before we got through all the images and articles and newspaper clippings and so forth that I wanted to share with you last week. So we're going to jump back into those in just a minute. But I wanted to clarify a couple of things that, if you remember last week too, I put out a request, if you will, for anyone who could remember a service station in Rocky Mount built, or in operation in the 40s or earlier. And so, we got a caller already. Let's get this call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, sir. Can we help you?
Hey, this doing?
You're on the WHIG TV station.
WHIG TV?
Yes, sir. You got a question or a comment for us?
No, I don't have a question or comment, but do you do birthdays?
Well, is the day your birthday?
No, it's not. But Saturday is my wife's birthday.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll wish your wife happy birthday. What's her name?
My name is Greg.
All right. What's your wife's name, Greg?
Peggy Johnson.
Peggy? Okay. Well, happy early birthday to Peggy. We're not on the air on Saturday, but hope she has a very happy birthday. Thanks for calling in.
All right.
All right, good night.
All right.
Well, there you go. Happy birthday to Peggy. So anyway, doing research for tonight's show, I was really curious about very early gas stations in Rocky Mount. I wanted to really, if possible, nail down what was the first one here. If you remember from last week's show, I had only gone back as far as the 1950s because when I did a search for gas stations and service stations from 1950 forward, I just got thousands and thousands of responses when I did my search. So this week I kind of zeroed in a little bit and went back as far as I could go back and found a couple interesting things. So before I get into those, Eric Dawson stopped by the shop, I think it was yesterday in fact, and we were talking about these early service stations and so forth. And I mistakenly told Eric two things, and so Eric, I want to clarify those two things I told you right off the get-go. Number one, I mistakenly said that the first gas station in Rocky Mount was there on the corner of Hill Street and Washington Street in a location where eventually the Pepsi-Cola bottling plant and Camasco and the popcorn factory and all was. Well, that was actually not correct. There was a business there well before that building was built. It was a battery servicing place. I think it was called Willard Battery Shop or something to that effect. But the very first gas station or filling station, service station, if you will, that I could find, let me clarify that, the first one I could find was actually also on Washington Street, but it was not on that corner. In fact, it was a little bit further south on Washington on the same side of the street as present-day Moore's Bicycle Shop. So, and the other thing I wanted to clarify was that, if you remember, we talked last week about a brand new central service station being built in the corner of Thomas Street and Church Street, and that there had been a station there before the new one was built, of course, but they tore that one down and built a brand new one there. So I actually ran across some information about Central Service Station when it was at another location in Rocky Mount, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But I mistakenly told Eric, I think it was yesterday, that the Central Service Station was there on that corner, Church Street and Thomas Street, back in the 20s. That was incorrect. I have since corrected my own error, and we'll get a little more detail about that in just a minute. So without further ado, let's go. By the way, today is Wednesday, September the 14th. If you're watching this on any other time, you're watching a rerun. We are live today, and it is Wednesday, September 14th, so glad to have you all with us. Okay, now that all that's out of the way, Lee, if you would, let's put up item number one. This was an ad that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in August of 1919. We're going way back now. And you see the name of the business, Walker Vulcanizing Works. Now, as I said, this ad appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in August of 1919, and when I did a search for the actual phrase service station, this place was the furthest thing I could even relate to a service station. And you see there it says at the very bottom, it's got the address, 233 South Washington Street, and as I just said a moment ago, that is actually in a general location right there beside Moore's, present-day Moore's Bicycle Shop. So that's where this place was. But if you see just beneath the word vulcanizing, it says gas and air at the curb. So in 1919, this ad appeared, Walker Vulcanizing Works, and they were actually a tire shop. And they actually worked on batteries too. And by the way, what I found out when I was doing research, the phrase service station actually did not refer to selling gasoline. It actually referred to servicing batteries. If those of you that remember years ago, and I'm, this goes back at least 50, 60 years and much further back than that, but batteries had to be routinely serviced. They had to have water added to them, or in some cases acid added to them. When I was in high school, I actually worked at Davis & Company Auto Parts, and we got in, I think there were 33-gallon boxes of battery acid. Yeah, it was in a plastic bag that was inside of a very heavy-duty corrugated cardboard box. And it had a little rubber hose that would come out, and you could release a little lever, and actually the battery acid would flow out into your battery. And we sold these things to gas stations and service stations and car dealerships and so forth. And back in that day, this was back in the 70s, we sold a tremendous amount of battery acid. The stuff would come in on tractor-trailer trucks. That's how much we bought at one time. It would come in on a tractor-trailer, and there was a whole section of the warehouse next door to the parts store there where we would store this stuff. So servicing batteries and putting new acid in batteries or topping off the acid in batteries was something that was obviously very dangerous, because acid would burn your skin. I mean, it was just something the public didn't want to mess with. And so there were battery shops around that serviced batteries, and they were referred to as service stations. Now this place, as you might imagine, being a vulcanizing shop, is, even though they did work on batteries too, they were primarily a tire shop. And so they repaired tires and they service your batteries for you, but they also sold gasoline. So in August of 1919 in Rocky Mount, this, in my humble opinion, is the first true gas station where if you had a car, you could drive up to it and get gas at the curb, as the advertisement says at the bottom of the listing. So 1919, Rocky Mount had a service station and you could buy gas. How about that? Okay, I mentioned a little while ago about Central Service Station. As far back as I could remember, Central Service Station had been there on the corner of Thomas Street and Church Street, and that was what I was finding in all the ads that I had done researching for last week's show. When I was doing more research for this week's show, lo and behold, I found out that Central Service Station was in an entirely different location, going all the way back to 1920. So Lee, if you would put up item number 2, and I apologize, this ad is in terrible condition. It's very hard to read, and I'm not going to try to read the whole thing, but it says the proof of quality is a result. You'd be surprised. And this is actually an advertisement for General Tires, but Central Service Station, in addition to selling tires, and it's hard to read, but over on the right-hand side of this ad, they advertise gasoline, oil, greases, free air, free water. And so they were, I guess what you might call one of the very, very early full-service service stations where you could get your gas topped off, you could get your oil, lube job, and so forth. You could get tires. I'm sure they probably topped your battery off too if you needed it. But here's the thing. This Central Service Station was located at the corner of Church Street and Sunset Avenue. So apparently at some point between 1920 and the roughly 1945-50 time frame, they moved from the corner of Church Street and Sunset Avenue to the corner of Church Street and Thomas Street, across from what would later become the Carlton House Restaurant and Motel. So from 1919, we had the Walker Vulcanizing Works. That was probably the very first gas station. But very shortly after that, in January of 1920, Central Service Station came into existence. And the next ad I found, excuse me, is in March of 1920. Lee, if you would put up item number 3. And item number 3 is a much clearer, easier to read ad. And as you see the headline there, it says visible gasoline. 2 large electric gasoline pumps with a visible reservoir supply your gas needs in the shortest possible time. You see what you get. No chance for a short measure. Always plenty of air and water, day or night. Tires and accessories. We're also agents for the famous transport trucks, economy pleasure cars, and Cleveland tractors. We buy and sell used cars of every description. Some good bargains now on hand, including a Cadillac 7-passenger. By the way, this is from March of 1920, if I didn't say that earlier. March 1920, this ad appeared. But they had a Cadillac on the lot for sale, had an Oldsmobile, had a Roadster, had a Dodge Touring, had a 2.5-ton truck, and a 1.5-ton Stewart truck. But anyway, Central Service Station, and you see the slogan at the bottom of your screen there, service is our middle name. So in many regards, even though the prior business I mentioned, the Walker Vulcanizing Shop, may have also had gasoline at the curb that you could get for your car, it really does look like Central Service Station was the first true service station that, did all the things that we've come to expect from service stations in later years. Central Service Station offered all those services under one roof, excuse me. And so, I think it's fair to say that they deserve the crown, if you will, of being the first in Rocky Mount to be a true service station. Okay, so Lee, if we would, let's go to item number 4. And I ran across this, it's a neat little story. It's nothing, and it's hard to see on your screen. I do apologize, but I stumbled across this because it made a mention of the Central Service Station. And it's just a little short story here. This is a little around the town as it was a little column that appeared in the paper back in the 1920s. This particular article appeared April 1922. And it goes on to say, J.M. Barr, the manager of Central Service Station, is authority for the statement that when your money is missing, keep your mouth shut and keep your eyes open. And that's about the only way sometimes to get it back. At any rate, not so many moons ago, the gasoline and oil man closed up the station at the corner of Sunset Avenue and Church Street and put the proceeds of the day's sales into a leather bag, the like of which some of the banks had been giving away for years. Not going directly home, he sought to seclude the wallet about the service station, since he had no safe. So he put it over into one corner of the building and covered it with a tow sack. On the following day, the proprietor searched all the corners, but without avail, and he was really, it's kind of blurred out here, I can't read what the word is, but it basically says he was upset his money was gone. He said he watched this clue and that, he examined the window and tried the door and locked and unlocked, looking everywhere, not a tire nor a tube was missing, not even the cash register had been opened, but with all the money, it was gone. However, a day or two later, after finishing a vulcanizing job on the proprietor then carelessly tossed the tow sack to the floor to have his dog grab it up and carry it out of the place. Doggone you, you've got my money. And with that, he followed the dog out of the service station and around the back of the building and then into the rear of the livery stables next door, and he watched the dog halt. Scratch, scratch, I tell you, he yelled to his dog, and sure enough, the dog began to scent about, and in another instant brought to light the leather bag with his $18-odd in paper and change. Now that's what I call a good dog, Barr declared. So his dog had seen him put the money in the bag, and his dog picked the bag up and took it out back and buried it behind the gas station. And he was lucky to get his money back, obviously. But that little article appeared in April 1922, and again, it referenced Central Service Station. That's what made me bring it up tonight. Okay, we've talked about, in last week's show anyway, the various brands that were out there, and certainly Texaco brand was a well-established, well-known brand from a very early time, all over the country for that matter, and certainly here in Rocky Mount too. And one of the early Texaco dealers was, many of you remember, Mr. John James. And so I stumbled across a city directory listing from 1958. It's a simple 2-line listing here, but just something about it just kind of jumped out at me, so I wanted to share that with you. So Lee, if you would, put up item number 5. And like I said, it's a very simple ad, and it's just a 1-line or 2-line listing in the 1958 city directory. and it got to be blown down, I guess, or reduced in size. It was kind of large on the screen. So Lee's working on that for us. But the thing is, it actually gave the address here. And so, you know, I had a cousin who used to work for John James, drove a record truck for him, in fact. Maybe you may remember Wayne Taylor. In fact, Wayne was tragically killed in an accident. There you go. You see the ad at the bottom of your screen there. But and Wayne Taylor worked there for many, many years, driving a record truck for John James. As I said, he was tragically killed in an accident, towing another vehicle. But I for the life of me, couldn't remember where it was. I remember the business. I remembered Wayne worked there, but I couldn't remember where it was. So I stumbled across this ad, and you see there, Coastal Texaco Service Station, John P. James, Texaco products, batteries, tires, washing, lubrication, and there's the address, 421 South Church Street. So that got me thinking. I said, well, I don't remember a gas station being at 421 South Church Street either. And so I actually did, of course, a Google search and did a street level view. And item number 6, if you would, Lee, this is a picture that I pulled from Google Maps, and it shows where Coastal Wrecker was in 1958. And you see in the background there's a train station. This is roughly right across the street, or a little bit down across the street from the old fire museum, Mark's Tire one time, I think it was, and almost directly across the street from the old funeral home, and I forget the name of that funeral home now. But this is where, right here in this corner, was where Coastal Wrecker Service was, at least in 1958. And I want to say they were somewhere else too at a later point. I'm not exactly sure about that, but anyway, seeing this picture didn't really do much to jog my memory, because I still couldn't remember a gas station being right there, but it was there at some point. So, okay, Lee, I'll tell you what, let's go to item number 7. And, you know, one of the things that I found when I was researching for tonight's show was just an incredible amount of grand openings in the year 1960. So much so that I have unofficially proclaimed 1960 to be the year of the grand opening in Rocky Mount. I didn't get a total count because some of them I just chose not to include in the listing, but there must have been at least 12 or 15 businesses that either opened for the first time in 1960 in Rocky Mount, or had a major renovation and had a grand reopening. And one of the first that actually opened up in 1960, January in fact, was a Singer Center. And that's what this article here was talking about. Most of the articles and most of the ads that appeared in the paper for these grand openings were much more elaborate. And I was a little surprised that the Singer Center was kind of bland here. But as you can see, it says the local Singer Sewing Center was open for business today, and its new, brightly decorated, air-conditioned quarters at 154 South Main Street. That'd be on the Edgecombe side, on the Nash side, down toward the train station. And it says at 1 p.m. today, the Singer outlet began a grand opening. Customers were encouraged to stop by and register for a portable sewing machine to be given away to the lucky ticket holder early next week. According to Norman Short, store manager, every person who enters the store during open house will receive a gift. The center, which moved from 158 South Main Street, has completely remodeled its new headquarters. The new store is equipped with modern electric heating and is completely air conditioning. In 1960, this was a big deal. You know, it says Singer's new site has an airy glass front. But anyway, this was the very first very first business that I saw that had a reference as having a grand opening. And as you just heard, this was actually more of a re-grand opening into a new location, newly remodeled location anyway. So anyway, but I found several, and it's almost time for our break. In fact, Lee, bring it back to me. We'll go ahead and get our first break in. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of these grand openings. We'll show you some more ads. We'll take your phone calls. If you've got an idea you want to share with us, 407-1111 is the number. So feel free to give us a call. And we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitation and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
And we're back. During the break, I just had a caller call in and said that at some point, he wasn't exactly sure of the date, but at some point, John James Texaco actually moved right across the street on the corner opposite from Central Service Station. They're on the corner of Church Street and Thomas Street. On that corner, it eventually became the Carlton House. I thought I remember seeing or reading that it had been somewhere else, but apparently that's where it was. They're on the corner opposite from Central Service Station. Okay, so appreciate that, caller. All right, so I mentioned before the break that 1960 was really, and it's hard to imagine it's been 62 years ago now, that there was just an explosion of commerce in Rocky Mount. I mean, I'm not saying it was the only year that that kind of thing was taking place and going on. Welcome to the call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
All right. That picture that you showed a few minutes ago about the location of where the Coastal Texaco was,
right
down there on Church Street and Hammond Street, that later service station, I think, transitioned into becoming Hotel Gulf.
Milton Sharon Station?
Sir?
That was Milton Sharon Station.
Milton Sharon.
Yep.
When he ran it, it was the
Hotel Gulf.
Hotel Gulf. It was
yep.
right there in the very next block south of the back parking lot to the Rick's Hotel.
That's exactly right. And I remember when that was there, now that you say that, I remember Milton Sharon, and I just didn't remember that being a Texaco there, but I do remember Hotel Gulf being there, sure do.
Milton Sharon had a brother named Clint Sharon, I think that was the manager down there of the Como Oil Company, oil jobber down there on South Church Street, down there near where the Atlantic Coastline Hospital was.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, buddy. Thank you. All right. Yeah, you know, and that was something else that we saw. As businesses grew and prospered, they expanded, and in many cases, they outgrew the place they were at, so they relocated. And so, as I was saying, 1960, there was just a tremendous growth of grand openings and business expansion and so forth. I must have counted 12 or 15. So, with that being said, item number 8, if you would, Lee, Sesam's Supermarket opened up their brand new store January of 1960 at the corner of South Church Street and Kingston Avenue. Now, of course, later years, you remember this store, the business is still there, the store I should say, the building is still there. Recently been bought out by a Latino couple, I think. But in any case, and I'm drawing Key Food, that's what I was trying to say. It was Key Foods for a number of years. But I didn't realize that this store was originally Sesam's Supermarket. And the picture quality is not great there, but the original in the Telegram in January of 1960, you can tell it's a neat little store there. But you see some of the prices here, pretty unbelievable too. Round steak, 75 cents a pound. Country ham, 89 cents a pound. 3 pounds of Jamestown sausage for 89 cents. Whole fryers, 28 cents a pound. Eggs, 3 dozen for 95 cents. Of course, everything's gone up, and inflation's hitting us all hard right now for sure. But 62 years ago, These grand openings were happening all over the place in all types of business: service stations, grocery stores, clothing stores, furniture stores. It was just a boom town going around here. And you know, I said before, it's a shame what's happened to Rocky Mount over the last 50, 60 years. I don't know that we'll ever return to the days of old where this type of business activity was so prevalent and growing so strongly all over. But certainly in 1960, things were booming in Rocky Mount. Item number 9, if you would, Lee, was an ad that appeared in February of 1960. You know, it was just about every month in the year of 1960 where there was a new business, at least one, and sometimes 2 or 3 were opening up. The Gold Leaf Grocery on the corner of Atlantic and Gold Leaf. And I think, I'm not positive, but I think this is kind of catacorners across from where that Stretch Line plant is now. That used to be Rocky Mount Undergarment. Now it's called Stretch Line. But anyway, and I understand too, directly across from that, of course, that the old St. James Church that's there. I understand the city has bought that church. My guess is, unfortunately, it'll probably be torn down. It's a shame. That's a very historic church. A lot of history in that church there. But anyway, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think this Gold Leaf Grocery would have been on the opposite corner from what is now Stretch Line and directly across the street from that St. James church there on the corner. But first thing I thought about when I saw this ad, the very first listing was the Gardner's Velvet Ice Cream. And we've talked about Gardner's Dairy here in Rocky Mount. Jim Gardner's father started that. And so one of the very first things that Gold Leaf Grocery had on sale for their grand opening was some of Gardner's Velvet Ice Cream, and it was 15 cents a pint in 1960. Again, some more really neat prices here. 5 pounds of neck bones was 49 cents. 2 pounds of bacon, 79 cents. 3 pounds of sausage was 79 cents. A pound of butter, margarine actually, 19 cents. Toilet tissue, 5 cents. Much cheaper things back then, obviously. Okay, so let's move on. Leading item number 10. In 1960, still in January, by the way. I'm sorry, that was February there. This is actually, item number 10 is in March of 1960. And in March of 1960, Cato's. Who remembers the Cato's store? I was a little fella, but my mother used to shop there, and I certainly remember going in and out of there with her. But in March of 1960, Cato's had their grand opening in Rocky Mount at 9 a.m. Thursday, March the 3rd. And you see there, they had drawings of giving away things. And, it was primarily a ladies and children's store, but I'm sure they did a fair amount of business at Christmas, with gentlemen shopping for their wives and girlfriends and daughters and so forth. So, but anyway, March of 1960 was when Cato's got started. Okay. Item number 11, really when I saw this ad, I just had a flood of memories come back to me. In March of 1960, on West Thomas Street, down by the city lake down there, Rocky Mount got, I think, our first Dairy Queen. Item number 11, if you would, Lee. And this was the grand opening of Dairy Queen. And you see the address down there at 1623 West Thomas Street. For many, many years, just a little bit up from this Dairy Queen location, of course, was the old Sunset Pharmacy. And when I was in high school, both of these were frequent stops for us that were fortunate enough to be able to leave school at lunchtime and go out and get something to eat. I remember sitting on the stools at Sunset Pharmacy and getting a hot dog and a Pepsi Cola there. And on some days driving over here to Dairy Queen and getting a cheeseburger and a Coke or whatever. But even when my kids were little, we used to enjoy going to Dairy Queen and going through the window and ordering a hot fudge sundae or a cone of vanilla ice cream and so forth. And I didn't realize that that store had opened, that business there had opened in March of 1960. And it's a shame. We've got a Dairy Queen now here by the mall, but it's certainly not the same, not by a long shot. But for those that had the privilege of being able to go buy a hot dog or a hamburger or get some ice cream for that matter, from the Dairy Queen, it was a neat place to go. Had a pretty good little business there for many, many years, and it was never really a big place, but it always seemed, at least during their heyday, I should say, they had a good business. In later years, obviously things kind of dwindled down and eventually closed up. But when I saw that ad, it brought back a flood of memories for me. Okay, Lee, item number 12 was an ad that did not specifically reference a grand opening, but there were so many grand openings going on, a lot of advertisers, I guess, figured, hey, let's get in on the bandwagon and do some promotion ourselves. And so this ad appeared in March, the same month that the Dairy Queen grand opening took place. This ad appeared, and it was a kind of a co-op ad between the local Texaco stations. And down at the bottom there you see John P. James. It's got the address listed as Church and Robinson Streets. J.E. Hammond. These were all Texaco dealers, of course. J.E. Hammond at the corner of Church and Sunset. Jimmy Bozeman at the corner of Raleigh Road and Nashville Road. South End Texaco service at Church and Bassett Streets. Long's Grocery at 1217 North Raleigh Street. North End Service Station was at Falls Road and Ridge Street. That was the one that I knew as a child as Manley Parker's Texaco. That's the way I was referred to it. And you know, when I think about Manley Parker and the Texaco station there, and I'm sure this same scenario played out in other neighborhoods too, but you know, down there at the Mill Hill, most of those houses only had one bathroom. And on more than one occasion, I can remember either one of the adults or one of us kids having to make the walk down to the gas station because there were so many folks in the house, and the bathroom was occupied. And so it was just, you know, you went down to the gas station and used the bathroom down there. So I know I made that trip more than once, and I'm sure others did too. But it just goes back, you know, that was just part of the neighborhood, I guess you'd say. But anyway, there were a couple other stations here listed. George Langley at Eastonburg Crossroads, excuse me, Barclay and Jordan on South Church Street, and Tootsie Cancel. We've just talked about the Dairy Queen, and right there by Dairy Queen on Thomas Street was Tootsie Cancel's Texaco station. So, but like I said, this ad appeared, you see they're advertising free kites with the purchase of 8 gallons of gas. You could get a free Texaco tanker truck if you bought gas. So it was just a neat, you know, little advertisement thing there that they were putting out to just kind of take advantage of the publicity and the excitement going on about all the grand openings taking place in the month of March of 1960. Okay, but it didn't stop in March. It kept going on through the year. In April of 1960, item number 13, Lee, if you would, in April, this ad appeared, and it says, I just got a text from Tommy Parker, said he still has his Texaco tanker truck. Good for you. I don't think I ever had one. I wish I did, but I'm glad to know somebody still got theirs, so that's great. This ad appeared, as I said, April 1960. The Appliance and Tire Center. This is over on Main Street, on the Edgecombe side, of course. That building is still there, by the way, and later years it changed names. I forgot what it became in later years. But grand opening, big deal, big sales. They were having sales on appliances and television sets, tires, air conditioners, I should say, even lawnmowers, and I mean just all kind of home and appliances and different things about the house. But again, big month for grand openings in Rocky Mount in 1960. Fast forward a couple of months to May of 1960. And Brewer's Gift Shop opens up. You know, I don't think I ever went in this store. It's item number 14, Lee. But I remember the building. The building is still there, in fact. But this was located on the corner of Raleigh and Tarboro Streets, about a block before you get to George Street, by the main fire department down there. But anyway, this was it's a pretty good sized building. And it says, this is May of 1960, you are cordially invited to the grand opening of Brewer's Gift Shop, home of fine gifts. Wednesday, May 4th. Designed to offer you gifts for all occasions, weddings, anniversaries, birthdays, special remembrances. Make Brewer's your gift headquarters. Also, see our selection of antiques. So as I said, I don't think I ever went in this store. As I recall, I think it was probably a little out of my price range. Out of my family's price range too, probably. But anyway, the building is still there. I don't think there's anything in it now. I think the building is empty, but I did a Google search, and and went to that location where that building was, and it appears to still be there. I didn't physically ride over there, but I think the building itself is still standing. So if anybody's got any souvenirs or gifts that they either received or bought for themselves from brewers, I'd love to hear from you. 407-1111 is the number. Lee, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead to item number 15 if we could. I mentioned earlier that it was the grand opening year, and certainly there were a lot of different stores grand opening. I didn't realize Winn-Dixie had its grand opening October of 1960, and it doesn't say here. Yes, it does. Thomas and Pearl Street. Okay, so this is the one that during that time would have been across the street, kind of on the corner there from what was Lincoln Elementary School and Gray Street. That block there between, I should say, between Grace and Pearl Street. Excuse me. That little shopping center right there is where this Winn-Dixie was, of course. Piggly Wiggly's got the space now. That's what I was trying to think of, Piggly Wiggly. But you know, it was just, as I said, it was just a lot going on. Rocky Mount was booming in so many ways. The population was growing. You know, we were several years past World War II at this point, and there was just money to be spent. And so business people got together and retailers and started opening up businesses, and Rocky Mount was literally booming. I mean, it really was a boom town. And as I said, you know, I saw there were other years where things were having grand openings and so forth, but 1960 in particular seemed to be just a really strong month economically for Rocky Mount in particular, but certainly probably for Eastern North Carolina, because Rocky Mount, you know, a lot of people came to Rocky Mount to shop from as far away as Roanoke Rapids and Tarboro and in many cases Wilson and so forth. So when Rocky Mount was growing, it was good for Eastern North Carolina. And by the same token, I think when Rocky Mount began going downhill, so to speak, I think it kind of hurt Eastern North Carolina too. It's kind of a two-way street there. Let's go ahead, Lee. Item number 16. October 1960, the Holiday Inn opened up, had their grand opening, and it says at the very bottom, Rocky Mount in Eastern Carolina's largest and most attractive. The actual grand opening itself was to take place on October the 8th. And if I'm not mistaken, at this time, this was the only Holiday Inn in this area. I had a friend of mine who worked there. It's one on Church Street, not too far from the intersection of Falls Road and Church. But anyway, I had a friend who worked there, and I knew a couple other folks who worked there too, as a matter of fact. But it was a very nice hotel when it first opened up, of course. You know, Hojo was a well-known, established hotel chain, and so with Rocky Mount being literally the midpoint between Miami and New York, and the travelers travel up and down 301, a lot of business came through here, and a lot of these motels up and down 301 did very well for many, many years until, of course, Interstate 95 opened up, and that kind of killed a lot of the motel business. Let me get this call. Hello, caller, you on the air?
All right, those two hotels, the Holiday Inn and the Carlton House, kind of came together about the same time, and they were put down there right in the middle of back of town. Mm-hmm. And with 301 being the main road through there, of course, the 301 bypass had done been built. Right. When those two hotels came into existence, the bypass was in place. Right. But as much as anything, the tobacco interest down there played a significant role in those two overnight accommodation places being put there. And I'm sure that was good for downtown Rocky Mount business in general. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Okay, buddy. Thank you. Okay. I'll tell you what, it's time for our next commercial break. When we come back, we're going to share a few more grand openings with you and a few more pictures. Talk a little bit more about some more gas stations, too. So don't go anywhere. We've got more to talk about. We'll be right back with more Way Back Wednesday.
I'm Daniel Moss, owner of Cornerstone Funeral Home, and I'd like to invite you and your family to give our family an opportunity to serve you in your time of need. And we offer a full line of funeral services, everything from visitations to graveside services to cremations on site with a live crematory, as well as a banquet hall to meet the catering needs of our families that we serve. We offer catering service. We offer refreshments prior to visitations and services of our family. And we want to invite you to come and experience the difference here at Cornerstone Funeral Home.
When faced with special care needs for elderly or disabled loved ones, families want compassionate, comforting care. That's Tender Touch Home Care Services' goal, providing the level of care we would expect for our own. With over 10 years of home care excellence, Tender Touch provides an array of services that keeps your loved one at home. From personal care, light housekeeping, errands, and meal preparation, to our private duty care program, which combines all of our home care offerings in one package.
Tender Touch Home Care Services, where your needs are our concern.
And we're back. During the break, we had a caller just call in and share some information, some memories about Sesame Supermarket. Lady said that the year that supermarket opened over there on the corner of Church Street and Kingston Avenue was the year her and her husband got married. And so they lived in an area not too far from there. And as it turns out, Mr. Fred Sessoms was the man who opened that store up. And so, like so many local stores in these little communities, people who lived close by became quite acquainted with the owner and would often refer to him by his first name. And so she said that they often called that store Mr. Fred's because Fred Sessoms opened the store. That reminded me of, when I was a kid over in Inglewood, Bobby Mears, for many, many years, opened up Inglewood Supermarket over there. I think he said one time in 1949, he opened up that grocery store. Had a little hot dog stand or something before he opened the grocery store. But anyway, for a lot of people in Inglewood Supermarket was known as either Bobby's or Mr. Bobby's. And I've said before, I used to go, had an aunt and uncle lived over on Rosewood Avenue, and we would go down there to one of the stores down there, and the owner's name was Joe something. We'd want to go see Mr. Joe or go buy something from Joe's. So, these little community stores became a fixture in the little neighborhoods, obviously, and so it was quite common for people to get to know the owner on a first name basis. And, again, there's so many things that used to be commonplace in Rocky Mount that have kind of gone the way of horse and buggy, unfortunately, and little community stores where the owner knew you and you knew the owner. If you're a little hard on your times or short on cash, you can get a little groceries on credit if you need it or whatever. But those days are sadly no longer with us. So we can reminisce about them, though, and think of how nice it was. All right, let's go ahead back to our pictures. Item number 17, we were talking about the Holiday Inn a minute ago. And, of course, like most motels at that time, Holiday Inn had a restaurant there. And this ad appeared literally on the same issue, same day of the grand opening of the Holiday Inn. And it was in reference to Quinlan's Steakhouse. And it says, "Time to dine at the new Quinlan Steakhouse Holiday Inn. Steaks are our specialty, but our menu includes seafoods and a variety of entrees. We also feature daily special luncheons at popular prices, an experience in fine dining. We invite you to visit Quinlan Steakhouse Holiday Inn." So I don't recall ever eating there. And frankly, I didn't realize that there had been a restaurant there. I guess I should have, because I said it was pretty commonplace, just like at the Carlton House Motel and a restaurant there. And I know a lot of the Holiday Inns had a restaurant and there by the motel. And so, but this is one that I honestly did not know anything about. Quinlan Steakhouse there as part of the Holiday Inn on Church Street in 1960 when they had their grand opening. Okay, fast forward a little bit to November of 1960, and there was another grand opening of a store that many of you will recognize the store if you don't remember the name, and it was Bissett's Drug Store. November 1960, Bissett's had their grand opening. It says Bissett's new super service drugstore, and this was located actually there beside the Winn-Dixie on Thomas Street. And so there's been a bunch of different things in this space over the years. I think there was a beauty supply house in there at one time. I want to say it was a couple of the businesses have been in there. But in 1960, Bissett's Drugs, and I don't think I ever went in that store when it was Bissett's Drugs. Anyway, I don't remember going in there as Bissett's Drugs. But as I said, it was there on that same block where Winn-Dixie was. And if you think about it, there would have been a lot of activity during the month or during the year 1960 when you had the grand opening of Winn-Dixie, and then just a few short months later you had the grand opening of Bissex Drugs. And you've got busy street there, Gray Street going down one side, and of course Thomas Street, very busy street in itself. And just a lot of activity, a lot of commerce, and things. Again, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but Rocky Mount was booming. In 1960, Rocky Mount was going strong, and it was a good place to open a business. It was a good place to be in business, and if you had just at least a little bit of business savvy, it was pretty easy to make a go of it, apparently. Okay, Lee, item number 19, November of 1960, again, same month, Sharp's Fina Station had their grand opening. That was at the corner, 620 North Raleigh Street, 1 block east of the Dairy Bar. And I believe, Eric, this might have been the station you mentioned last week to us. But this is their grand opening announcement. It says, watch for grand opening soon with prizes for parents, children, and the home. Jack Sharp and his son Buddy are the operators of this Fina station for the best in service gasoline and motor oils. And there were other Fina stations around town. You see at the very bottom of your screen there, it says there was one at 820 North Raleigh Street. There was one at the corner of Raleigh and Nashville Road. And then another, I think that was actually in later years, Teeny Johnson's Tiger, that one at Raleigh Road and Nashville Road. And then, of course, there was one at 302 Cokie Road. So there were a few Fina stations around, but this one had their grand opening, Mr. Sharp's, in November 1960. Okay, I mentioned earlier that some months had several grand openings. November was one such month. There was at least 3 that I found. There were probably others that I didn't even include. But also in November of 1960, Motor Bearings and Parts opened up their grand opening. Item number 20, if you would, Lee. And this is actually a picture of the Motor Bearings Parts. I've mentioned before on the show that when I was in high school, I actually worked for a while at Davis & Company Auto Parts, right down the road from this place. And being in that business, you got to know all the other auto parts stores and the people who worked there. And we would frequently call each other. If a customer came in looking at a part that we didn't have, we'd call around, try to find it for the customer. And so, I got to know the guys who worked at Motor Bearings and talked to them on a regular basis on the phone. But this was their store that opened up at 725 South Church Street, November 1960. And you see at the bottom it says, it is with pleasure and pride that we announce to auto dealers, garages, and mechanics the grand opening in our new home, 725 South Church Street, where we are more adequately equipped to serve your needs for genuine authorized auto parts and accessories. We invite you to visit us and see how well we are equipped to serve your needs. So they were obviously somewhere before they moved here. This was actually like a grand reopening in a new location. But again, it fits along with the same thing. The business was so well, they were doing so well that they were actually able to go to a new building, and I'm sure it was a larger facility. And it's just another testament to what was going on in Rocky Mount in 1960, definitely the year of the grand opening. Speaking of grand opening, December 1960, another grand opening took place in Rocky Mount, the Gray Bar Restaurant and Steakhouse. And item number 21, if you would, Lee. This was the ad that appeared in the Rocky Mount Telegram in December 1960. And you see there, it says, announcing the grand opening of the all-new Gray Bar Restaurant and Steakhouse, Highway 301, 3 miles south of Rocky Mount. So if you're looking for good food, delicious, juicy steaks, ocean fresh seafood, and the most pleasant atmosphere, be sure to visit the Gray Bar Restaurant and Steakhouse. This is another restaurant I don't think I ever ate in. I seem like I vaguely recall seeing the establishment, riding by it or something as a small child, but I don't think I ever went in there. And I'm constantly amazed at the businesses that were open in a time frame where I could have gone in, but for one reason or another just never did. I guess, my parents never went there that I recall, and so I don't recall ever going there either, but there were a lot. We had some really nice restaurants all up and down 301, certainly, up and down Church Street, all around downtown Rocky Mount. And again, 1960 was a good year to be in business. Okay, so moving on beyond 1960, the business and growth in Rocky Mount certainly didn't slow down. If anything, it continued on. I didn't look to see how many grand openings there were in 1961 or 1962, but I just ran across so many in 60. I wanted to share those with you. Let's get this call. We got a caller here. Hello, caller. You on the air?
Going back to the 50s and maybe the late 40s and whatever, there were some of the service stations that actually got involved in doing recapping passenger car tires back in the years when passenger car tires were bi-supply tires, and before the day and era of steel-belted radial tires. It was very common for passenger car tires to be recapped, and some of the service stations actually got involved in doing that. One that comes to mind is on the corner there, right straight across Church Street from where the Central Cafe is. It was, I think, an Amoco station that belonged to the Warren brothers. Mm-hmm. And they recapped passenger car tires in the back of their service station where the service bays and whatever were. I don't know. And, you know, it was right there next in the back of the Rocky Mountain Telegram where all the newspaper boys would gang up to get their newspapers.
Right.
That was a part of their business, recapping tires, car tires.
Well, you know, since you mentioned that, you know, right beside Miss George's was Pridgeon Tire for a number of years, and they sold recap tires there. They did recapping too there.
Okay.
They sure did. Okay, buddy. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, you know, it's been many, many years ago now, but I seem to recall somebody saying they were looking to find some recap tires, couldn't afford to buy new tires, and so they were looking for someone that sold recap tires. And like I said, it's been several years ago now, but I don't remember how long it's been, certainly 25 or 30 years probably, since I've heard anybody buying recap tires. I don't even know if you can buy recap tires anymore. I know there was a while, not too many years ago, where I saw a reference to recap tires, but I don't know if that was just somebody had, if there was actually somebody actually still doing that. But it used to be pretty commonplace, as Eric said, before steel-belted tires came along and there were glass belts and bi-supply tires, recapping was a big business. Okay, Lee, so that was number 22, was it? Well, that was 21. That was 21. So let's go to 22. Item number 22 is in October of 1962. And this was just a listing of Shell. Oh, we've got a call. Let's get this call. Hello, caller. You on the air?
All right. Something else about the tires.
Yeah.
Steel-belted radial tires came out. They were not suitable in passenger car size to be recapped. The wall thickness and everything about the design and the building of a steel-belted radial passenger car tire does not lend itself to it being recapped.
Oh, okay.
Not the case with commercial tires like on big trucks. Mm-hmm. But steel-belted radial passenger car tires, I don't think have ever had the eligibility to be recapped. That's
interesting. Okay. All right, buddy. Thank you. Okay. Item number 22 on your screen, I know it's kind of hard to see that. I just shared this just to kind of give you an idea of just the sheer number of just this one brand of gas stations that were operating in Rocky Mount and in this area in 1962. I'm just going to read down through the list, but it starts off BB Bun Service Station in Brattleboro, E&L Shell Station, Highway 301, North Rocky Mount, the Firestone Store, Rocky Mount, Howard Johnson Shell Station, Highway 301 Bypass, Fred Joyner Service Station, Elm City, Marx Brothers, Rocky Mount, Pate's Shell Station, NC 43 West, that's about Swelton Heights, or was, CI Price Shell Station, Route 1, Rocky Mount, Daughtridge Shell Station, Rocky Mount, NC Highway 43 West, Stony Creek Shell, Tanner Shell Station in Brattleboro, Shell Tarboro Street Station, Shell Thomas Street Station, Whitaker Shell Station. So all of these, like I said, were in 1 year, 1962. Now these weren't all open in 62, but the point is, you know, gas stations were so prevalent. In fact, Eric mentioned the other day, we were talking about this, he said, you know, some intersections, there'd be 4 corners, and of those 4 corners, there'd be a gas station on 3 of them, or 2 of them maybe. But they were very prevalent. It was a booming business, and so a lot of stations opened up, and, you know, a lot of places had a good go at for a number of years. Okay, Lee, let's go to item number 23 if we could then. And this is just a listing that I saw that made a reference to 2 gas stations out in Inglewood. And you see that it says announcements. The Flying A service station at 2412 Sunset Avenue in Inglewood is no longer operated by Mr. J.J. Andrews. We're going to open the new Inglewood Phillips 66 station at 2529 Sunset Avenue on or about September 1st. So I don't know if this is the same Andrews that was involved with Carpet Land, for example, out there on 301. I'm wondering if this is Curtis Andrews' father. I don't know that for sure. I suspect there may be some relation somewhere along the way there. But I didn't know that Mr. Andrews was the one who started Inglewood Phillips 66. As I said last week, I worked there. I know some of the viewers worked there. That was a typical job for a teenager back in the 50s, 60s, even into the 70s. And I have some fond memories of not only working there, but as Eric just said, that was one of my spots for pick up newspapers. Telegram would come by for us carriers and drop off bundles of papers for us to sit and roll up and put rubber bands on and slip them in bags if it was raining, and then go load our bicycles up and go around the neighborhood delivering newspapers. So I have a lot of fond memories of Inglewood 66 for sure. Okay, Lee, item number 24, about to run out of time here. Item number 24 is an ad. And just like there was a bunch of Shell stations I mentioned earlier, in 1964 there was a bunch of Amoco stations. This ad has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 Amoco stations in and around Rocky Mount. There's a couple listed in Nashville and Tarboro, but the vast majority of these are right here in Rocky Mount. And again, it just goes to show just how busy Rocky Mount was and how many gas stations there were. They were literally on every corner and sometimes 3 or 4 on every intersection. Okay, we're not going to get through all of these, but I do want to get to at least 2 more before we go away from here tonight. Item number 25, Lee. Again, this is in April 1965, the grand opening of Rossi, Griffin, Texaco at 300 Tarboro Street. As I said, the 1960s were booming in Rocky Mount, and it carried on into 1965. And I think this will be the last one we get to tonight. Item number 26, Lee Oil Company. We mentioned in last week's show some of the families that were involved around Rocky Mount. Certainly the Stallings family, the Daughtridge family, the Lee family was certainly very influential in getting stations set up. They were the Sinclair dealer. Many of you remember the Sinclair had the logo of a dinosaur. In July 1965, this ad appeared in Rocky Mount Telegram. I did a little bit of research and found that the Sinclair gas company, or oil company, was actually started back in the early 1900s. And it was actually acquired by Arco. Remember Arco Gas Company in 1969. But in 1976, Arco sold the Sinclair product line off to another company. And so Sinclair, believe it or not, is still operating in the western part of the country today. There are still Sinclair gas stations around. I didn't know that until I found it out getting ready for the night show. Folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. We've run slam out of time. I want to thank those that called in, and thank you for watching tonight and sharing your evening with us. Had a few more pictures I wanted to get to. We'll try to pick up some of these next week. We may go in a different direction next week. Gas station is interesting, and I'm glad we had a chance to spend some time on these the last couple of weeks, but I don't want to wear them out. So we may share a few more next week, but we'll try to find a new topic next week. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate you every week, your calls and so forth, and sharing your information and memories with us. Have a great week. Take care of yourselves and be kind to one another. We'll see you next week with more Way Back Wednesday. Good night.